Let's dive into kind of what's going on with the banking system. It's been, we saw Silicon Valley Bank collapse. We saw a lot of the crypto native banks collapse. What do you guys think, is going on with this? And how do you think about the depositor bailouts, I guess, that have been occurring where maybe the banks will go under, but everyone supposedly is getting all their money back? And Caleb, you can start with that.
Yeah, man, that's the question I think on everyone's mind, right? Is how severe is this impact actually going to be? And I think as of right now, it seems contained because the Fed backstopped, what was that now? 2 Sundays ago, so a week and a half ago, essentially, with the BTFP coming out pretty strong with that, joint announcement essentially with the FDIC and the Treasury. And so, I think that had that announcement not been made, we could be in a very different kind of financial economic situation, if you will, because my perspective on this has essentially been that, if most people had never heard of Silicon Valley Bank before, 2 weeks ago. And so if, the average US American is sitting around, last Monday, seeing, people not getting their money out of the banks, people aren't going to be like, oh, is that a globally important systemic bank? Like they don't know what a GSIB is, right? So like all they know is that people aren't getting their deposits. And so regardless of who their bank is, they're going to go and try to get their money out. And so it could have turned into a more severe kind of widespread dilemma, if you will. And, we all know that, fundamentally how, I don't want to say frail is the right word, but, shit could hit the fan really quick, right? Especially when reserve requirements are so low or basically zero. The Fed, the banks don't have your money, right? So like if people start to wake up to that fact and confidence is waning in the system, then that confidence has nowhere to go but, further and further down. So I think, let me say this, is that, some people were coming out and warning about Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and Silvergate and so on and so forth. But I think from my perspective, like fundamentally, it's really hard for people to have, made that call on these banks, and kudos to the people who did. I think from my perspective, the kind of model that I've been operating with since I published this in November is this idea of the earthquake effect, which is basically that after massive inflation that we've had, that's essentially the earthquake. And in coastal geographies, what happens after that earthquake occurs is you get the shifting in the tectonic plates and all the water from the ocean starts to recede. And then eventually you get this big tsunami that comes in, right? So in this model of, inflation being the earthquake, the tectonic plate shifting was the Fed's massive tightening cycle. And we're seeing that liquidity get pulled out of the system. All the naked swimmers are getting exposed, if you will. And now what we're starting to see, at least I thought, is that for the first time, we're seeing that tsunami out on the horizon. Because with the failures that we're seeing in the actual banking system, this was kind of the first, non-crypto contagion event that we've seen over the past 12 to 15 months. And so from my perspective, this was, kind of the one that could actually threaten the actual infrastructure of our economy and of our financial system. So far, because of the intervention that's taken place and because the systemic risks, I think, have been somewhat mitigated, I think maybe I was a little bit premature to say that that's a tsunami out on the distance, but it certainly could become one, right? And so from my perspective, I don't know who the next naked swimmers will be or when they will get exposed or how severe it will be. But from my perspective, so long as the Fed continues to embark on their tightening cycle, I know that they just injected a lot of liquidity into the system. So this is clearly a changing dynamic, right? But from my perspective, I'd be very surprised if this was the last naked swimmer to be exposed, or if it's the last, bank to essentially be exposed and to go under, right? So we're already seeing a lot of stuff coming out about First Republic, and now there's another like small bank that I'd never heard of before that's, tensions are happening there. And so we'll see, right? But I think either way, right, like my position is that we will see more naked swimmers getting exposed. And at some point, one of those naked swimmers won't be able to be intervened, and that tsunami will actually be, coming onto the shore, if you will.